Kick it off right next to
All right.
There we go.
I get to kick this off with Whip Scalise. Thanks for inviting us, Whip Scalise, and good morning, everyone. It may be a new year, but we're still suffering under the policies of the Biden administration. And you saw the terrible jobs report come out last week, below expectations. Some people are calling for us to lower our expectations. I, for one, refuse to lower my expectations for the United States of America. Friday's job report, again, failed to meet expectations. The percentage of Americans working in the workforce is the lowest it's been since the Carter administration. We need to work to get workers back to work. And at the same time, we're seeing prices rise and wages not keep up with inflation. That means for every paycheck Americans are getting, they can buy less goods. We're seeing these price rises, and it's functioning like a tax on all Americans. You can go to the grocery store, and you see prices go up. You go to fill up your pump at the gas station, prices are going up. Americans are feeling it in the pocketbook, and the Biden administration's policies are clobbering working Americans. We need to change course in America. We need to change course soon. Congress in this administration needs to change course. We should be working on getting workers back to work and promoting policies that will actually turn around a historically poorly performing economy. My work on the Select Committee on the Economy, we're going to be focusing on just that, to make sure that all Americans have an opportunity to succeed. And I'm proud to be here with my colleagues today and look forward to continuing to promote conservative solutions that are the answers to the challenges we see today. Let me pass now to my colleague, Lisa McClain.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. As a mother of 4 children, education is one of the most critical things and gifts that we can give our children. And right now, our children are suffering because we need to get our children back in school. School, if you think about it, is a place for education. That's an obvious one. But it's a sense of community. It's for learning. It's for growth. And the mental health of our children and what we are doing to our children by not allowing them to go back to in-person learning is devastating to our children, their mental health, and I'm going to argue to their future. We must put the power back into the parents' hands, not the teachers' union. I, as a parent, believe I know what's best for my child better than the teachers' union does. At the end of the day, I will ask you this. I represent my child, and I think I am the best person to represent my child. I believe in individual liberties, but I also believe in the future. And our children are our future. We must get them back into school for the obvious reasons, of course, of learning and education and growth, but also the sense of community, and their mental health is suffering. We need to get our children back into schools. Give the parents a little truth, transparency, consistency. Provide the parents with the facts, the science, not the political science, but the science. Put the power back in the parents' hands. Empower the parents, not the teachers' union. And let's stand up for our children. And with that, I thank you, and I turn it over to my colleague from Iowa, Marionette Miller-Meek.
Well, thank you all for being here, and I thank my colleagues. And we're here really to discuss the failure and the lack of leadership coming from the Biden administration. Over the past year, this administration has failed to deliver on their promise to shut down the virus. Instead, they've continued to politicize the pandemic and fearmonger. They have threatened the jobs of hardworking Americans, including our military, with a mandate that has been struck down or blocked by multiple courts across the country. They have threatened to shut down businesses, even though Main Street has already suffered enough and faced the challenges of an ongoing supply chain crisis. They only pay lip service to in-person learning, appropriating funds to make schools safer, and still have threatened to return to virtual learning because of breakthrough cases, which is already causing irreversible damage to the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of our students. I believe that we must do everything we can to keep America safe, our economy growing, and our schools open. We must do this by following the science and giving Americans consistent advice that does not change every other day. The CDC has flip-flopped on their guidance too many times to count. They have ignored common sense and cherry-picked the science numerous times. Recently, Dr. Walensky said that what we have all known for some time, that vaccines do not prevent the transmission of this virus. Last month, we learned that the White House thoroughly dismissed a detailed and well-researched proposal to drastically increase the availability of rapid tests, frustrating experts. In Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds launched Test Iowa all the way back in April of 2020 to expand testing availability. In July of 2021, Test Iowa was replaced with free at-home coronavirus tests. I have been incredibly disappointed by the intense focus on vaccines as the only way out of this pandemic. I have seen no interest from this administration to take into account infection-acquired immunity, and I've seen little work to make treatments or therapeutics readily accessible to all Americans. The science shows that this vaccine is not 100% effective at preventing infection or transmission, so we must seriously begin working to help Americans with treatment options. We know that the vaccines can seriously reduce serious illness, hospitalizations, and death from breakthrough cases. I traveled to every county in my district to administer vaccines to Iowans who wanted them. As a doctor, I know that everyone has their own unique medical needs and conditions, and we cannot treat them all the same. I encourage every American to speak with their provider or their doctor to determine if the vaccine is right for them. It was right for me. But the rhetoric and the actions from this administration are not helpful and must change immediately. We must work in a bipartisan manner to help Americans adapt to life with this virus. I look forward to working with all of my colleagues to get this job done. And now it's with great pleasure that I introduce Minority Whip, Representative Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Marionette, and welcome back. I hope you had a great Christmas and a Happy New Year. It seems a lot like Groundhog Day, though, because we're here back in D.C. for another week where the Democrats are not bringing a single bill to confront the many crises that they've created, from inflation that continues to rise to high gas prices, which continue to take more and more money out of the pockets of hardworking families, to the border crisis. And now if you look, right now a lot of people are back in school, but then we just saw the other day, last week, 5,200 schools were closed. And a lot of attention was focused on Chicago, as it should be. But look, Chicago took billions of taxpayer dollars, and yet their union bosses made a decision to keep the kids shut out of school. We have called on President Biden to stand up to the union bosses and stand up for our kids all across America who are being denied opportunity when they shut down schools. Either they open schools back up or they should give back the billions of dollars of our hard-earned money that they took, because the money was there to keep schools opened. And those that took it and still want to keep kids locked out of school is denying those kids opportunity. And we're fighting for them. I know my colleagues here have been doing that. It's time President Biden stand up for those kids by standing up to the union bosses that he's been afraid to confront on one of these many crises. Over and over again, we see crises that are hurting hardworking families, and President Biden won't lift a finger to help those families. Just look at what he promised when he was running for president. How many times did President Biden say, "I will shut down the virus"? And today we're worse off than when he took the oath of office. And he walked in inheriting 3 different vaccines that President Trump's Operation Warp Speed created for him. There were antibodies. There were other therapies. This president has done nothing to advance therapies. He's done nothing to look into natural immunity and see what the benefits of that would be. He won't even hold a hearing on the origin of COVID. And so we continue to call on the Biden administration and Speaker Pelosi to start having hearings to confront this, instead of standing up with the union bosses against our kids and ultimately not doing anything to help those hardworking families who are struggling, because families are struggling right now. And they're looking to Washington for leadership, and they're not getting anything other than rhetoric and failed promises. Look at the report that just came out during the break that highlighted that President Biden was confronted with a plan to create over 750 million at-home tests for COVID, and he said no. I think it's important that we ask, who else was involved in that decision? Was CDC involved in the decision to say no to tests that now are needed? People are waiting in line hours and hours to get testing, and President Biden had an opportunity back in October to allow for testing at home for people from COVID, and he said no. Which of his health officials were involved in that decision? And why did he say no when he campaigned promising that he would shut down the virus? When a lot of my Democrat colleagues a year ago were criticizing the lack of testing, and today you can hear crickets chirping with the silence from them because they won't stand up to this president who has failed on so many fronts. So we're going to continue to try to address these crises. It's time Speaker Pelosi stand up and try to address these crises too. It's time President Biden stand up and start addressing these crises as well, because they failed the American people and it's causing pain all throughout the country. With that, we'll be happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Congressman. I wanted to ask you about something that was reported in Punchbowl News this morning, that Leader McCarthy is interested under, a hypothetical Republican-run House in 2023 in preventing members of Congress from owning and trading stocks, whether that's through a blind trust or only mutually traded funds. I wanted to ask you if you could share any more information you might have about that, and say whether you would be interested in including spouses and family members under that as well.
I haven't seen that report. Obviously, there are current laws in place, and we've seen abuses of those laws that have gotten members in the hot water. And, ultimately, there shouldn't be conflicts of interest as it relates to stock. And there are people that come to Congress with 401ks and things like that. But I haven't seen that report. Be happy to look at it. Yes.
If Republicans do win the majority, what would you say are some of the top either investigative or oversight priorities for the GOP?
Well, in addition to bringing legislation to the floor to confront the crises that we're facing, which is something we are already working on, a very bold conservative agenda to get inflation under control, to lower gas prices, to control our border. We also plan on doing a lot of actual oversight, real oversight, robust accountability for the Biden administration that's not being done. I know Jamie Comer and his committee will be very active, but every authorizing committee has an oversight subcommittee, and they're going to be active as well, holding the administration accountable, bringing in cabinet secretaries to start getting answers to some of these questions. We can't get real data on COVID. We will absolutely have a hearing on the origin of COVID. We'll have a hearing to look into the out-of-control crime across America that seems to be encouraged by some of these local governments that are still pushing defund the police, that are not prosecuting criminals, so that you have smash and grabs. You have a lot of other violent crime that's going unchecked in cities. But we want to have hearings on all of these things to get the real facts out and hold the administration accountable for their failures. It's going to be an active part of a Republican majority. We're not there yet. Obviously, we're working hard to get there. But you saw it in Virginia. You saw it in a lot of other states where people don't want big government socialism, and they want to be able to have control, as Lisa McClain said. Parents want to have control over the kids' education. Whether you're conservative or liberal, you're a parent first, and you care about your kids' education. We've talked about a Parents' Bill of Rights. We're going to be bringing a very robust agenda forward, along with real accountability and oversight.
Quick follow-up on that. What about Hunter Biden? Is particularly questions about these paintings that he has been doing, and questions about who is paying for these paintings that are being displayed over in these New York galleries. Will that be investigated particularly?
Well, each investigative committee, I'm sure, is already looking at some of the things we want to do. Holding China accountable is going to be a big issue that we're going to have, and looking into some of these foreign countries. Were foreign countries involved in some of those sales? We don't know, but frankly, I think those are the sort of things that people are very interested in, because there is no investigation going on right now into foreign countries' involvement. It wasn't just China's role in creating the coronavirus. A number of us had a hearing on the Republican side to look into the origin of COVID, and every scientist we had at the hearing, it was not just Republican scientists, people across the political spectrum, all said that if you look at the genome of this virus, it was not transferred from a bat to an animal to a human. It was probably modified and manipulated in the lab in Wuhan. We ought to have real serious investigations into it, but it seems like some people don't want to confront China in their role, not just in the virus, but on so many other fronts. So you're going to see very active oversight and investigation into wrongdoing and into, frankly, into basic transparency that we all ought to know. We all ought to know what is the basic data in each state on COVID. What are comorbidities playing into deaths? We ought to have all the information that, frankly, this administration promised they would give, but they're failing to do. They said they would shut down the virus, and we're worse off today than we were a year ago. But one last question.
Thank you very much. Senator Ted Cruz said a few days ago that there's enormous pressure on a Republican House to begin impeachment proceedings against President Biden. Do you agree with that? Or do you believe that there is enormous pressure? Do you feel the enormous pressure to start impeachment hearings if you guys do take the majority next year?
Right now, the real pressure I think is being felt is the failure of this administration, Speaker Pelosi, to use the House to help working for families. We want to get the majority back for a number of reasons, but the main one is to go and fight for those families that are being left behind. And they're facing pressure right now. They're facing pressure of inflation. They're facing pressure of high gas prices. There will be a lot of oversight and investigations, and we shouldn't predetermine where that's going to go, but let's get facts out and finally start having real accountability as we determine if somebody did something wrong. That accountability is not happening right now, I think, because they're trying to cover for all the failures of the Biden administration. You won't see anybody covering. In fact, we're going to be working hard to get to the bottom of facts and transparency so we can hold people accountable for the failures of those people who are facing real pressure today out there because they don't have enough money in their pockets and they're paying more for things that they can't even find on the shelves. With that, we'll see y'all on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you.